It's time for this week's episode of Brandon's Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon's Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon's Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Canadian Paralympic Paralympian Canoer and Kayak Brianna Hennessy. How are you doing today?
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having me. Great.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get into being a professional canoer and kayak and Paralympian?
Honestly, for me, it happened so quickly. It was surreal when I ended up going to Tokyo, and it still feels surreal now. I've been playing elite sports my entire life. And when I had my accident, I had played at the national level for rugby, AA ice hockey, ball hockey, at the national level. And I was an Ontario boxing champion as well. So that all got torn away from me. So I kind of had to open up my mind to new things after my accident, and that's when kind of parasport came into my life. But if you asked me this question a couple of years ago, I probably would have said there's no way I would be doing this sport because I've never done a water sport in my life. But honestly, I was doing wheelchair rugby, and when COVID hit, I got an email asking if I wanted to try it out. And that was in August 2020, last year. And I said, what the heck? I still didn't know at that point if I could swim or not, but I said, you know what, I got a life jacket and I'll put myself out there, and here we go. So I guess now I know that I love the sport. I fell in love with it right away, and I have a lot to learn. I've only been doing this for just over a year. So I think my team's going to be super excited to follow this journey or pathway to Paris in 3 years. But I guess the short answer is I didn't know, but I know now.
What was it like, obviously, getting into wheelchair rugby?
I mean, I was scared at first. I had a lot of stubbornness and pride in not wanting to take up anything that had accessibility equipment with it. Because I think that was kind of a way of, I guess sort of turning off the fact that I had any disabilities. I wasn't ready to accept that yet. And it took me two and a half years to finally sit into a rugby chair. And when I did, I immediately fell in love with it. And I immediately regretted how stubborn I was for the 2 years before that. But honestly, parasports for me is, how I got reintegrated back into the community, how I met other people that were like me, how it created a sort of like a sense of normalcy for me in a life that's anything but normal, and has become the biggest part of my ongoing recovery and therapy. So I guess they've all kind of tied in together, and they're now pretty interwoven. So, but yeah, I ended up seeing the wheelchair rugby team, the Ottawa Stingers. They were actually practicing in the gym at the Auto Rehab Center where I did all my rehab. So I used to go down there and watch them practice. And I thought, oh my gosh, these guys are crazy. They were just going around these crazy battle chairs, hitting each other at full speed. And I said, you know what? I've always been in contact sports. I didn't know that there was a contact parasport. So, once I built up the courage to do this, then, so I ended up going out for one of the practices, and that, I guess it just took off from there. I fell in love with it, and I kept coming back. So
What was it like playing for the Tampa Bay Generals?
I mean, for me, I was super excited because I had worked really hard. It's a male-dominated sport, so 96% of the athletes are men, and only 4% in the world are women. So there's only men's leagues. So for me, making the provincial Ontario level in Canada was amazing, but it opened the door. And I was actually imported to play, like you said, for the Tampa Bay Generals. But what was neat was that I was the only female that season in 2019, right before COVID hit. I was the only female in Canada to be imported on a US team. And there's 44 teams in the US, and each gets one import from a different country. So I was pretty thrilled and honored to be a female from Canada going down to play in the States. And on top of that, our team was a Div 1 team, and we ended up being seated 4th in the entire country by the end of the season. So, they've become my US family. And I'm super honored to be invited back to play this season. So we just started up our season again. We had a tournament in North Carolina, won 5 out of 6 of our games. So we're getting that ball rolling again. So I'm super happy.
What was it like, and how did you know that you wanted to get into kayak sprinting?
I guess it was just an email that I got during the pandemic, and out of the blue, it was actually from my wheelchair rugby coach, the Ottawa Stingers, saying, "Hey, do you want to try, parakayaking and canoeing?" And I said, "That exists?" I didn't even know that was a thing. So I think it just kind of it trailed from there, and I ended up being connected with the provincial coach, who connected me with my club, the Ottawa River Canoe Club, where my coach Joel Hazan was. So I was kind of, I got my life jacket, and I was kind of dropped off there one day like a puppy in a basket, lost by the river, and showed up on his doorstep, and we took it from there. I think a big part of my motivation, or that inspired me from the start, was just how well my coach and I clicked. We have very similar personalities, and it reminded me a lot about the boxing coach that I used to have and in my corner before my accident. So that I think that bond too really helped to propel how quickly that I was able to progress as a team with him. So yeah, it just kind of happened all super quickly and out of the blue. But they ended up, I guess they scouted me from Wheelchair Rugby. So it's a pretty small world or community in parasport. So I guess someone at some point, it was Mel Lacroix, she works for the Canadian Sport Institute, and she's also a physiotherapist for Team Canada for Wheelchair Rugby, said, "Hey, what about Bree? Maybe she would be a good candidate." Because I guess with the extension of that extra year from Paralympics and the Olympics being 2020 to 2021, they had this whole extra year of, hey, maybe we can try and look for an athlete kind of thing. So it kind of, it came out of left field for me. So.
What was it like in 2021 going to the ICF Paralympian Canoe World Cup?
That was my first international competition, and I was quite nervous, of course, traveling so far and it being my first international comp. But it was also the first time that I had to use the boots and line up my boat in the boots. So we only had to practice one day before, where I got to try getting in the boot 3 or 4 times in my boats. So I was pretty nervous about that. But a funny story is that our national coach, my para-national coach, actually called my club coach Joel about 5.5 weeks before this international event. And at that point, I'd only been practicing kayak. And he said to my coach, "Hey, Joel, do you think that you could get Brianna to go straight in a canoe in 5 weeks' time?" And when my coach called me with this, I said, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I said, "Okay, you're the boss. If that's what you think we can do." So I actually ended up putting kayak kind of to the side, because I had to learn how to J-stroke and learn how to steer without a rudder on the bottom, a over 20-foot long canoe boat in a very short amount of time. So to be honest, because of my accident and having my brain injury and memory and cognitive problems, it was very hard for me to do one sport and try and balance in that kayak. But having to switch cognitively from one to the other is still challenging for me, actually. But going to this international event, I had two different sports on my plate that I didn't expect. So I think I was just trying to make as many things as I could go right in those short moments, with the event, the 200-meter only being, a minute long. So I was definitely very nervous and excited, but I guess when it came down to it, I somehow pulled it together and qualified to go to Tokyo. So we were all kind of, blown away. So, yeah.
How do you balance, obviously, being a sprinter and also playing rugby?
The cool thing about the two sports is that ParaCayak runs from the spring to the fall, whereas wheelchair rugby kind of follows hockey season. So it's September to April is when the nationals are. So it allows me to kind of use them both to cross train for each other. So I'm super lucky with how they line up. So and in rugby, you're pushing forward a lot, whereas in kayaking, you're pulling back, right? So it's also using opposite muscles. So so the timing of it, I guess, is what gives that little bit of flexibility for me to be able to do both. So yeah.
What are some of your favorite memories and moments as a Paralympian rugby player?
So as able body or for kayak canoe. So
Either one.
So for me, if I go back to when I played able body rugby, so before my accident, I think for me, my favorite memory was after nationals when all the athletes were sitting on the rugby pitch, and I had my parents there, were super supportive with my sports, and they named the national team and my name was called. And I still remember the feeling of just sort of hesitating and going, did I hear my name? Was that right? And just that moment where I locked eyes with my parents as I went up to accept and sort of shake the national coach's hand, and being accepted or chosen for the team, I think was one of the most exciting moments for me before my accident in my sporting career. I think another moment for me in able-bodied rugby was just when I got to do some things that I guess weren't usually seen in that sport. So for example, I grew up playing 8 years of competitive soccer before I got into rugby. And I remember this time when my coach was telling me, nobody kicks the ball all the way down the field like a soccer player. We just don't do that in this sport. And of course, in my mind, as soon as someone says I can't do something, then it gets stuck in my brain. And I remember the game, and I was playing fullback at the time, and I kicked the ball over the entire team, and then I took a run for it. I was a very quick sprinter before my accident, and I ended up getting to the ball first and then kicking it the rest of the entire way down the rugby pitch into the end zone, and then tackling over my own ball and scoring a try. And I just remember, because in rugby, there's a whole part about being, the sportsmanship of it is that when you score a try, you're not allowed to really cheer. You just kind of, got to play cool, calm, and collected and walk away. Otherwise, And I remember when that happened, my entire bench just went crazy because we had been talking about it for so long, and my coach was just laughing her head off. So that was just one of those silly moments in sport for me that meant a lot to me, that I always cherish and remember.
What are some of your favorite memories as a sprint kayaker?
I think my favorite moment was in Tokyo, basically my coach told, I'm not sure if you've heard the book The Power of One, but it's I won't ruin the book, but essentially it's about a South African boxer and just some of the hard times he went through growing up, and just some of the resilience that he had to show, and tenacity to get through some of the things. And so I think he was just trying to sort of parallel some of that stuff with me, which was super cute, because I do shadow boxing in my wheelchair to warm up before I kayak. And there's a saying in that book that he taught me that basically it's first with the head, then with the heart. And in those moments right before I left the dock and he was giving me my pep talk, it was kind of a way of showing that he would be with me. It's kind of like on my shoulder, as I was going up to the line, but also it just brought this calming feeling over me of just really breaking things down and simplifying it for me. And he would say, what are you going to do in your first 50 meters? And I'd say, okay, I got to go straight off the line, and I got to use my head. And then he would say, okay, what about at the 100 meters? And I said, okay, that's when I have to power up. And I still got to be thinking and use my head. It's all about the technique and precision. And then he would say, okay, what about the last 50? And that's when we hit that lactic acid wall. Somewhere between the 100 and the 150 mark, you hit that lactic acid wall, and your whole body slows down, and you feel just like you're dying out, right? So with kayaking and canoe, it's all about who can die out the slowest, right? Even all the able bodies, they get that same lactic acid wall. And so I said, that's when you do it with the heart. So it makes me emotional when I say it now, and he would take like a fist, like a boxing fist, and he would touch it above my heart on my life jacket. And then I'd go off to the races, literally. But that was kind of my favorite moment, because it was something that we shared, that we both understood that nobody else did. And it was very moving for me. And I kind of, it just broke it down and just recentered and refocused my brain to, okay, your job is to just do your game plan that we've practiced. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. That's your job. It just, I guess, it resonated with me since then. So yeah.
That's pretty amazing. What is it like being a dual Paralympian?
I've actually haven't been called that before, so it's got a nice ring to it. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. I thought, just being able to do one sport would be incredible. I'm a very humble person, so for me, it's just always trying to learn what I need to next, and sometimes I don't stop to realize, oh my goodness, where am I? I'm in Tokyo right now at the Paralympics. It's any athlete's dream, come true, and in different ways. Being a Paralympian, many people can be born with impairments, or we can have an accident like I did, but it really kind of gives you that moment where you've not only faced adversity, but you've overcome it in some ways, and found strength in your struggles. So for me, being a dual Paralympian, I guess, is just that added bonus. I hope that I'm going to be continuing on with both sports. So we'll see if I can qualify again in Paris.
What was it like, obviously, going to the Olympics for the first time?
I mean, I know that some of the other fellow Canadian athletes that have experience with other Paralympics, they were saying that the biggest thing they noticed, of course, was that there were no crowds, right? So there were no fans that were allowed in any of the stadiums or events. But for me, I felt so overwhelmed by everything else going on around me that it was okay for me to not have that piece of, the screaming, roaring crowd as well on top of everything. So I'm sure it'll be a completely different experience if I have the if I had the honor to represent my country again in Paris. But honestly, it was pretty neat being in a Paralympic village amongst so many other incredible human beings that all have these amazing stories and are there fighting for their own survival story, and it's just super empowering being there. Above all, when we're all in competition mode and everyone's super serious, we're all kind of in the zone and we get a little bit introverted, but it was really special being able to share the closing ceremonies with all the other athletes from all the different countries, just because we were all there kind of fighting for some of that same thing, of a piece of our life back, or a piece of strength in our heart back that we maybe thought that we had forever lost, and in hopes to inspire others as well around the world with disabilities that you can do the same thing. So yeah.
Of course, being in the village, what was it like seeing Paralympians that you grew up watching, such as, let's say, Jessica Long, the swimmer, compete, and what was that like for you?
At the time when we were watching the Paralympics for the first week, we were actually over in Komatsu at a training camp there. Just because of with COVID measures in place, we were only allowed to arrive into the actual village 3 to 5 days before our event. So it was kind of crazy, because when we were watching it on TV in Komatsu and supporting all the different Canadian athletes, I still felt a little bit disconnected from it. Like, that's not going to be me. Look at these amazing athletes, look at what they're accomplishing, despite all their disabilities. And I was just in complete awe, and it's kind of like looking up to someone that inspires you, or a superhero growing up, or, someone famous. And for me, I was thinking, oh my goodness, that look at these incredible things. And it never really connected that to me that, I would be one of those people going over there the next week. For me, I had my job to do, but it was just incredible watching and having a lot more exposure too for the Paralympics, than ever before, this, in Tokyo this year. So yeah, I mean, I was still blown away. I still felt like, I'm watching these athletes on TV, and yeah. Yeah.
Was there any athletes that obviously you saw in the Paralympians that you were like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting blah, blah, blah?
I think it's for me. I mean, for me, I look up to the wheelchair rugby team, and for me, I always talk about how so Patrice Desjardins, he's a 3-time Paralympian. He's the co-captain of Team Canada, and he's also my coach for my Ottawa Stingers wheelchair rugby team. He's the one that taught me everything I know, and I always call him my my white knight. You know, my hidden white knight kind of thing. Whereas, you know, lots of the time there's these leaders in our communities that we sometimes, you know, that we don't see or that aren't recognized. And for me, him sort of taking all that time to teach me everything I know in wheelchair rugby, you know, that's what gave me my self-confidence back. That's what pulled me out of my deep depression. And, you know, I'm forever grateful, you know, to him, and, you know, for him to have gone this long into 3 different Paralympics, and just the other day saying he's going to try and go for a 4th, you know, is absolutely incredible to me. And it's probably because I have that, you know, history and that emotional connection with him. But you know, it's an honor to watch these different para athletes, you know, continue on their journey and just pave that path for the rest of us just coming out of rehab, even just wanting to do para sports recreationally. You know, people like Pico, that's his nickname. You know, that they all they care about is, you know, inclusivity for everyone. And, you know, that's what inspired me from the start. And I've hoped that I've made him proud along the way too. So I would say, yeah, Patrice Desjardins for sure.
What was it like the first time you got to put on the Team Canada jersey?
I think it was super emotional for me because these games, we were away from our family and friends, and usually everyone would kind of be there together. And I remember laying out my jersey on my bed in the Paralympic Village, and I had a Canadian flag on my wall, and I had my it honestly, it felt overwhelming with emotion. I was so excited. I was so honored to be able to wear my country colors and represent my country. And in those same moments, I had never felt so alive since my accident, with it giving me so much of my identity back and so much of my purpose in my life. So it honestly, it felt amazing.
Of course, what did it feel like to have the rings on your chest?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I think for any athlete, you know, this is the ultimate dream, is to reach the world stage like this, and to, you know, to show everyone what you got, and you know, what you're all about. And you know, the Olympics and Paralympics, to me, they're both amazing events, but they represent different things. And the Paralympics, for me, you know, it represents all these people that have had maybe something tragic happen to them, that have all the reasons in the world to give up, but choose not to. And so it makes it so much bigger than the sport that we're doing, the medal that we could get. It's, you know, it's the camaraderie amongst these wonderful people that put up a fight, that said, I want to take part of my life back, and I'm not ready to give up, and I deserve this. You know, to live again and to feel joy and happiness. And I think that for me was the biggest honor, even above wearing my country colors, is just having that Paralympic symbol on my body, and earning that, just meant that I was amongst these people that, you know, that were fighting for our survival story, and that were hopefully going to be part of this movement of inclusivity, but also in inspiring the next generation that there is a place for us. And, you know, if whatever your dream is, it's never too late to start it, and to keep going after it. So yeah, it's it's pretty moving for me.
How does it feel to have Paralympian behind your name?
It's of course it's incredible, but I also feel like I've said a couple times where, I'm the face of the production, but I'm not the producer. So I kind of go back to, when I had a conversation with my coach before we went to Tokyo, and I said, when athletes win a medal, do their coaches get a medal as well? And he's like, I don't think so. And I said, if I ever had the opportunity to win a medal at the Paralympics, I'd have to get out a pizza cutter and cut this thing in 12, 15 slices, because there's so many wonderful people on my team behind me that I wouldn't be anywhere without them. And so, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a wonderful, special community of people volunteering so much of their own time, their family time, just to make one person's, Paralympic dream come true. So, I would say, to me, we have a team of Paralympians back home here. Even though I'm the only one that gets to wear the jersey. To me, that's the superficial part. So I'm honored to have this attached to my name forever. But I feel like it was definitely a group effort to get here. So
Of course, talking about medals, did you win a silver, bronze, or gold medal in the Paralympians this year?
So I made both finals, and I ended up placing 5th in the world in canoe and 8th in kayak. So for me, this year was more about, getting on the board and being in the running, and letting the rest of those girls know that here I am, and I'm coming. So I think I very much accomplished that. We didn't expect to be here at the games, this soon. But as I keep saying, look what our team accomplished in just over a year. Just think about what we can do in 3 more. So I'm super pumped. We've already started our training, or the countdown days to Paris has already begun. Yeah.
Of course, as you begin the countdown and training to Paris, what is it like to obviously train and compete to obviously go to Paris?
I think for me this time, I'm going to feel a lot more prepared. I'm going to have, time to make this sport more, to develop that muscle memory that I probably still don't even have yet, to develop the muscles that I need. It hasn't been enough time, right, to try and kind of make some of these movements or techniques, put them on autopilot, I guess. But for me, maybe this time I could have my family actually there, my parents there, and that for me, I think is gonna just bring it to a whole other level. It was great, being able to connect with them back home and stuff. But I think just knowing to have, sort of my whole team going there to Paris and being physically there, I think is gonna just might give me that extra edge in the end to to get on that top 3 mark. So we'll see what happens.
How is it gonna feel, obviously, in this upcoming year, going to Paris, and obviously, hopefully, in the next 4 years, COVID won't be an issue, and having your family there with you to celebrate the moment of obviously being in the Paralympians?
Yeah, I think it's crazy how quickly the time will fly by. So Paris is into 2024, so that's 3 years, and then our first Paralympic qualifiers for our sport is in 18 to 20 months from now. So I know that the time's going to come up pretty quickly. So we've done some debriefing. We have lots to work on. I have lots to learn. I'm just trying to take it all in like a sponge. It was really neat to see that, everyone's on board, and my team is on board, my family too, because there's lots of sacrifices that have to be made, throughout the journey. That everyone's, super pumped and invested and got both feet in. So that helps definitely like fuel my drive and will hopefully help propel me right to Paris. So that's that's the game plan.
What advice would you give females looking to get into obviously paracanoeing and rugby and other sports like that?
I would say that my first regret was how long I waited to start my para sport. So my first advice would be, whether it's just for recreational or competitive yourself out there, kind of feel isolated or that you're the only one. You can learn a lot more from other people that have, been through maybe a couple more years down, their lifeline from when they had their accident. For me, the biggest realization that I had from my para sports was just how much of an impact they have on your mental and physical health. Lots of people even were noticing that during COVID when they didn't have those connections with people and they didn't have those connections in their communities. And that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give is that, it's great. You'll have your physiotherapist and your occupational therapist. That's wonderful too. But this is kind of a way to get out there and make some new friends while you're still doing active recovery. So it's kind of like a 2, 3 in 1 kind of thing.
What advice would you give people looking to go to the Paralympians for the first time, like how you did, or whether it's going multiple times?
I would say the biggest thing is you will never be able to sort of get rid of your nerves. It's very nerve-wracking and it feels super stressful. But to trust in your game plan. So you've put a lot of work into it, a lot of training. And you've come down with sort of a routine where you can have a little bit of predictability. My biggest 3 things that I tried to remember when I kind of felt like I was spiraling out of control emotionally was something my psychologist taught me, and that's to have routine, ritual, and ridiculousness. So the routine is just figuring out your new grounds there, figuring out where everything is, and having a sort of a routine for when you go to bed or what you're eating. How long it takes you to get to your event or practice, stuff like that. A ritual could be, writing down what you are in control of and what you're not in control of, for example, before your event, just to sort of refocus yourself on the things that you can actually, put your efforts into, so you're not sort of wasting energy. And the last one was my favorite, is ridiculousness. So, having something that makes you laugh, right? So for me, my sense of humor is really what's gotten me through, all of this. So my psychologist said to me, find something that you're terrible at and do that. And for me, I'm terrible at singing. So essentially, it was doctor's orders that I had to go around the Olympic Village randomly singing at some points, anytime that I felt super stressed. So it definitely helped put a smile on my face and help, relax me a little bit. So I would say to any new Paralympian that's going to be participating in Paris, that you're free to use my secret recipe.
That's wonderful. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Oh, great. So I'd love for you to follow my journey to Paris on Instagram, and it's at Breezer, BREEZER, and then my last name Hennessy, HENNESSY.
Thank you again, Brianna Hennessy, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as you begin your preparation to Paris.
Thanks so much, Brandon, for having me and including a Paralympian in your talks.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Brianna Hennessy, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.